Good evening and welcome as we join you live right here on Daily Mirror for another edition of Date with Danu. During these quarantine times, we are just keeping ourselves busy, doing things what we have to do, and making sure that everyone around us safe. Now, keeping that in mind, we would like to say a big thank you to all those who make Date with Danu possible, all our sponsors. Thank you so very much for joining us, from Quantum to our partners who are with us from British Cosmetics, Vikramarachi Opticians, and also our friends from Jonathan Studios, Movenpick Hotel, and so much more. Now, these are the quarantine specials, so I do it at home in my room. With me today, I have a young leader who is phenomenal. I've always admired her courage to go fight, to speak her mind, to be such a great ambassador for Sri Lanka. She has been inspiration to me and to many others. I'm happy to have Kavindya Thennakoon with me on the show. I'm just trying to connect with her. Good evening and good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you? It's so nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. And what time is it there?
I think it's 7:30.
Okay, it's 8.
I'm in my PJs, but you can't see that.
Yeah, me too. I'm also half dressed.
Yeah, this part is good.
Yeah.
I got out of bed and I look terrible, so
But you look fine. All right. So Kavindya was also a cover girl for the High magazine, if you do remember, in her little black dress, in a red dress, right?
Red dress.
Yes,
Red
and
dress.
you looked phenomenal. You have done everything. You have done TV, you have debated, you have worked with kids, you have done it all. You have presented on shows which are very much lifestyle oriented.
Yeah.
Have you ever put a pause button on you? Have you ever said, nah, this is not for me?
I think the lifestyle show was something where I was like, this is not for me. It wasn't because I worked with obviously a phenomenal team, and I just think that the topics weren't things that I was passionate about. I was pretending to be excited about things that I wasn't. That was when I was like, this is really not for me. And I put but you were there for my first audition.
I actually don't see you running from one retail outlet to another saying, oh, I'm not a big fan of this dress. Let's just find something else. So not you.
That was literally what I was doing. I was looking at trailers of me being excited about oh my God, this is the exact turquoise dress that I really wanted. And I was like, oh my God, this is, I was young also, I was trying to fit in.
But it was,
and
for me, I would love to run to 10 shops to shop. That's me. But everyone has their kind of thing that sort of attracts them. And I always knew that was not for you, but yet you were phenomenal doing it. So amazing.
I pretended well. I had a fabulous team. So I guess they made it all work, but that was hard. Yeah.
You are such a gem to our country. You are such a talented little girl with good education and very, very hardworking. So tell me about your school and about your uni life.
Yeah, so right now I'm at Stanford, finishing my master's. I'm obviously not at Stanford physically not at Stanford because we are social distancing, and I've been having Zoom classes, which is freaking awful. So here what I'm doing is I'm doing my master's in learning design and technology, which is at the education school. Yeah, and it's been such a blessing to be here, given where I came from, and to just look back. I'm on the shoulders of so many people who sort of broke open doors for me. So I'm truly, truly grateful. And it's been such a hell of a year. So that's been exciting to look back.
Now, you have done some great things. Your drive towards, being someone who is very vocal in the community about injustice, it could be for anything. It could be for equal education. It could be for equal rights for people to all study, to gain education. These things are all very, very important things. Where does this passion sort of come from? This drive to make sure that your voice is heard for the right thing? Some people,
Yeah,
some people may be, okay. Some people, when they become socially known, they feel like, okay, it's their responsibility to champion a cause. But
same
you have
thing.
always
Mm.
been someone who has championed a cause no matter what. And at that time, you were still in your school uniform.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was weird. I think even in school, I had a bit of a rough schooling, I guess, career.
Mm,
School was like a very difficult place. I always felt I wasn't heard and I was always like misunderstood. I would always ask why. I would be like, why do I have to wear socks that is 4 inches above my ankle? Why am I asked to wear black shoes instead of brown? Like, why? What is
mm,
the reason?
yeah.
And I think it was always this curiosity to know why things were in the way they were.
Mm,
And I think on the flip side, my my dad passed away when I was very young.
yeah.
He was killed when I was two, and he worked at the prisons department. He was a prison officer, and he was someone who was really known for sticking by the law, doing what was right, and always standing by the side of justice. And he knew he was having death threats, but even despite all of that, he always stood on the right side of history. And I think from a very small age, even with my mom, that was something that was sort of told to me, and it was his story about speaking your truth. And I think that's something, because I didn't grow up with him, I think that's something that has always been around me and in my family and my
Yeah.
mom to always,
His
it doesn't
principles
matter.
guided you, although he was not there.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, true.
so. I always knew that my conscience at the end of the day was important.
Mm.
Yeah,
But
I
but
think
you
that
know,
was
we do not come from a generation or the type of school life that we have lived where we are allowed to question the system. The
of
system is
course,
what is given to you. Like cut,
absolutely.
like in our school, we had a rule saying cut your hair short, but not short enough that your skull can be seen. And when your skull is seen, you end up applying shoe polish and you sit with it at school. And I always found it so confusing. I'm like, how does that work? So,
Like,
like when I
what
go
is
to
the
the
boundary?
yeah, so when I go to the barber, like at the top of the road those days, I used to be so scared because if he makes a mistake, I pay the
You're
price.
gone. You're
Yeah, so
done. Yeah,
correct. So I'll be
you
applying
don't
shoe
go to
polish on
school.
my head. Correct. So we have never challenged the system. We have always been like,
Mhm.
okay, even if a teacher skips a subject, we're like, okay, fine. So she skipped a subject, let's go and or
That's it.
he yeah, let's go and learn it from our tuition center or let's ask somebody else. We are not going to question them saying, why did you skip it?
No, of course not.
This yeah, so what is it in you that sort of created this little spark where you were able to ask why?
I think so when I was small, when I was taught reading, like how to read single line English, I wasn't given like fairy tale books or all these like classical children's books that you were
Right.
given.
No
Partly because of
radiant way
my
and all.
none of that stuff.
Okay.
I think also because my mom was a single mother, we were living in a little rented house, Ami couldn't afford any of that. And I was read like very socialist leftist newspapers. I don't know if I can mention brand names, but there was this very famous leftist newspaper in Sri Lanka, and I used to read that.
Hmm.
That's what she would give me to read so that I could practice my reading.
Right.
So I think from a very small age, my mom really intentionally or unintentionally curated this really interesting childhood and learning experience where I was always asking why. Where even I would ask her, like, why are you asking me to do this?
Hmm.
And I think even in school, we had this rule that we should have relationships in school,
Hmm.
right? Like, you should have a boyfriend in school. And then I'm like, what is the boundary? How
Yeah.
do you establish a relationship? Is
Hmm.
it when I touch his hand? Is it when I say I love you to him? How do you know? What is your proof that I have been having a relationship with X, Y, or Z? So it
Yeah.
was like silly things like this. I always I was like, why? Why are you asking me to do this? So I think it's really my mom and
Hmm.
the kind of books she gave me, the kind of woman she was. I mean, she's like this brown woman who's like super outspoken,
Yeah.
very silent, but very sort of in line with her principles. So I think she was very influential, I feel. Yeah.
Um, that's amazing. I always wonder like today our education system is one of the key fundamental reasons for lots of problems in our country. It could be diversity, it could
Yes.
be the fact that it could be a caste issue, it could be the fact of,
Yeah.
you know, rich, poor, it could be the fact of you have fair skin, I have dark skin issues. All these are fundamentally created in a school environment where
Of course.
you see, where you see favoration for someone who is first in class being like, oh, he's so intelligent, whereas the
Yeah.
last in class, you're not
Not
intelligent.
so good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So these words really penetrate a youth's mindset.
Of course.
I don't know how involved you are with the local syllabus, because I think you would have been in international syllabus.
Yeah, we
How?
had a bit of a hint of the local syllabus.
Yeah. But you
Yeah.
have worked with like in projects like, you know, my classroom, and which I've been a
Yeah.
part of as well.
Yeah.
In these projects, what have you seen in the youth? You know, for them to go conquer the world, if they're going to spend 10 to 12 years of their lives learning this,
In a place. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And when you put yourself today in the US and trying to learn something so different, and the
Yeah.
lifestyle is very different, how do you
Mm-hmm.
sort of, what would you tell the youth to keep in mind when they actually attend their alma mater?
I think the thing is, sort of, there are two issues. It's one way of how we approach this system of education that's given to us. You know, we are told to study these 10 subjects from grade 1 to 12 in this way. And we're basically memorizing everything that we've learned in a year and then putting it on a paper in a limited time frame. And then we say your entire future will be decided on how well you perform within
Yeah.
these very terrible conditions. Right? That's we have an exam-centric education system. I mean, obviously, the flip side of that is that's because we have limited university placement places, and the other side of it is our vocational training space really needs like a complete redesign, right? So there are obviously all these like very real issues around it. And on the flip side is how can we curate our own experience? How can we do what's needed but also get ourselves ready for what the 21st century skill set needs.
Mm.
And I think for me, what I've seen is two things. Whatever subject area you come from, whatever occupation you want to go into, time and time again, if you look at research, there are two things that stand out. One is the need for critical thinkers, people who are able to see problems in a critical way, debate about it, and argue about it, and come up with their own opinions. And the second thing is we need creative problem solvers, people who are able to look at community issues, look at global issues through this third eye, out of the box thinking. So I think one thing is that our education system needs to gear towards that, to giving the skill set that the 21st century needs. And on the flip side, we as learners can't wait until that gets fixed. So I think it's like this two-way thing of trying to make it work and really learning for the joy of learning.
Yeah, true.
You know, that I never had that in school. I used to throw up before exams because there are some students who just can't do exams. Like,
Yeah, and
I
that
can't
anxiety
memorize.
is, yeah, I think because we started at a very young age, at grade 3, kids are sent to like scholarship classes at
Of
grade
course.
3. And 3 years is what, 7, and some are 8. What in
Yeah.
the, like, that's the time when
What
we're
do you
trying to
even
figure
do
out,
at that age?
yeah, like, you know, how to wear our own PJs in the night and go to sleep at like 7 in the
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah.
And whereas here we are trying for a national examination, which is going to determine whether you're going to a better school or whether you're going to just be here. You know,
Yeah.
these things are real huge issues. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is you're in the modern world championing on a global level, representing Sri Lanka and studying at fancy places. And it's all because of your talent and the fact that you pushed yourself. You are not you got a scholarship to go. That's something that I have to tell everyone. When you get a scholarship, it's a huge achievement because you have proven something more. You have proven the fact that you have broken the boundaries. That's the only way you can get a scholarship. If I'm going to sit through the boundaries, I'm just going to be just following the protocol. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, let's speak a little bit about your award with the Queen. One, you dressed a sari. You looked absolutely beautiful. I have one question to ask you. How is the Queen in person? Does she look anything like what we see her on the crown?
It's so funny. So I think I didn't realize what it was until I like went for it. because I thought,
Tell me
okay,
about
like,
what is it? What did you when you won the
yeah.
what are many
So
things that you have won?
it's it was a 3-year program. It was called the Queen Young Leaders Program, and what they did was they sort of supported 60 sort of startups slash community change projects for 3 years. So we had 3 batches of 60 people who were supported by the Queen's Commonwealth Trust. So this was the program, and it was Without Borders that we won the award for. And yeah, about the Queen, I think I didn't. Anyways, I think it was just weird because there's so many protocols, and you're
Yeah,
just
of
like, oh my
course.
God, this is like this out of world person.
Yeah, true.
But she was really funny. Like she cracked like a couple jokes, and I was like, oh, like you're a person. That's weird.
Hello there.
I
We
was
can
like,
spell talk
hello
Marathi.
there. And at one point, I was like, should I steal a spoon?
You should
I
have
don't
so
know.
done it.
And I was like, I could have. My mother would appreciate this,
Yes, I know. Royal teaspoon here. I
right?
know. Yes,
And then I didn't do it, obviously. I was like, I chickened out. I know
I
it's,
know.
I know what
You
to
know,
do
I would
then.
have I have like top 10 questions to ask her. Like, why doesn't she like shellfish? And
She
like,
doesn't like shellfish
no, it's prohibited in the royal family. Somebody in the past has got food poisoned or something like
and
that.
died. Oh, that's
I don't
funny.
know about that.
I mean,
I
that's
also
not
want to
funny,
know
but
about how many umbrellas she has.
oh, that's true. And also, she
Yeah,
matches like her hat to her,
correct.
like,
And she has a hook that she keeps her handbag on.
that's
I
creepy.
I have things that I really want to ask her one
Oh
day.
my God, I wish I knew these things.
You
I
should
mean,
have
it's
so
not like
taken
she's
her
on
and
my like
gone.
speed
You
dial
should
or
have said,
anything.
meet this boy who has to ask you 10 questions.
It's like if I had Lizzie on my speed dial, I could be like, yoga, like my friend Danu has some questions for
I
you.
know.
Yeah. But no, she was very nice. But I think it was much afterwards that I realized what that meant. It was sort of like them giving us back what they stole from us.
Mhm.
So I was like, wow, the
Yeah,
power dynamics here is so off.
true.
But
But
that
she
took
has
some
seen
time.
our times. She is from our time. She
She
has
has
seen the
seen
Ceylon
so
becoming
many
Sri Lanka.
waves of change.
Of course. She has seen it all. Let's
She
speak
has
about
seen it all.
Without Borders.
Awesome.
Now, where did it all start? How young were you when you started? Were you even
Mm,
allowed to like go out by yourself at this time? Did you have a national ID at this time? None of the above.
none of the above.
Yeah, you have not done your
Uh,
eyebrows at that time as well.
I mean, I still don't. There was somebody at like the TV station I worked for who would go like, oh my God, like, why can't you do your eyebrows?
You're like, I'm underage. I just
I'm
overperformed.
like, I can't go to a salon. I'm sorry. My mother doesn't allow me to go out. No, anyways. So, I started Without Borders when it was 2015, so I was like 18-ish. And there was no organization. Like that was so out of the question. Like we weren't even thinking about that. So for a good part of my life, I was born and raised in Dharanekara, which is where my mother is from. And when I went back home after I finished school, I realized there was this huge disparity between the kids I had grown up with, my friends, and me after that 18-year gap,
Of
sort
course.
of 10-year, whatever gap. And then what I realized was these kids, so many of my friends were super creative. You know, they would like go into the forest and cut these like, there was this tree called Ladap, and they would cut these like little sticks and build these elaborate houses, like little architecture, you know? And one of my friends was, when I went back, I realized she was getting married and she was working at a garment factory. And obviously, that is totally, if that's what you want to do, go for it. But she had so much potential beyond it. And then I realized it was simply because my mom had the ability to take the initiative to take me to Colombo. That was the only reason, the only reason, and that I was able to like learn English. I don't come from a family that speaks English. I had to learn it. And then I realized I need to do something about it. It's so wrong that these were people from my childhood, people I had learned from, people who had influenced me. And then I just sit back and watch this sort of disparity right in front of my face. So With Our Borders really started as an English teaching program. We were in a rundown sort of temple, like the temple has a little, the Banamadur, like the little hut.
Yeah.
So we started there. There would be like garandiyas that fall off the floor, like the
Mm.
roof. It was crazy. But I think after I started, I realized education learning is a research space, and we've never done like intentional research into how people learn, what people should be learning, how students react in classrooms, how can we sort of rethink classrooms entirely. So then it sort of evolved into bringing together a team, and really rethinking what education can be. So I think now we're sort of pivoting into our next 5 years to see what we want to do. And we want to have more of a tech focus as we move forward. So we're trying to figure things out now. So
Okay, and how has this? What is the feedback that you had got when you had spoken to students and when you have worked with them? There is a huge opportunity lost when there is a language that stands in between.
yeah,
English seems to still be such a language that shows, oh, English is
yeah,
or
that's
even
like the
when we
market.
have, yeah, and even when we have somebody representing Sri Lanka for anything, oh yeah, English ka pa karana ba ni?
Danny,
Yeah,
Danny.
yeah, it seems like it's frowned upon, whereas other countries that do not speak any other language except their own are very,
Embrace
very
it.
proud
Yeah.
about it. Where do you think the problem sort of stems from when you have spoken to so many kids and worked with these kids? Is it
Yeah.
the society, or is it the fact that we come from a very colonized background?
Yeah, I think in terms of the language, Danu, like you rightly pointed it out, colonization has so much to do with who we recognize as being intelligent and a figure of authority and expert. All of that is so ingrained. Like the colonization really like left us brainwashed. But I also think on the flip side, a lot of the laws that were passed in this country, a lot of the systems that were put in place by very rich Sinhala Buddhist men who were educated in Britain.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to open up that opportunity to the rest of the society, to
Yeah.
people from working class, lower middle class backgrounds. So I think we're built on a system that's so unequal. But also, I think for us, the struggle is
They
we're an
thought for the
island of,
country. Yeah. They
yeah,
thought for the country. Yeah.
exactly. And we we are an island of 20 million people, and we are one of the only islands that sort of, I mean, I think we should be all learning Tamil because a majority of people in the world, more than Sinhala, Tamil is the more commonly spoken language from
Yeah.
the two.
In other parts of the
So,
world. Yeah.
of course, in other parts of the world. And I think the problem is we need to embrace language. We need to go beyond this idea that somebody who can't speak English is somebody who is less competent or literate. And even with the kids I work with, they have such great ideas and they're able to express it so beautifully in Sinhala. When it comes to English, they struggle. And I think in one way, we need to make sure people learn all three languages and learn English as a bridge language. And also, we get over these like very elitist ways of thinking that we have, of how we measure success. So it's a lot of different pieces, I feel.
That is true. Something in the last few years, Sri Lanka has spoken about so many things about mental health awareness. We have spoken about
Yeah.
depression. We have actually started speaking about this. And the ones who have actually come forward to speak about such things have been the youth.
Yeah.
The youth have created a bigger impression and an impact in the society about, depression is not a sin. You can talk about it. Yeah. And being, if you're being verbally abused on social media, you have to screenshot, put it out there, make sure that you sort of create awareness.
Yeah.
Where do you see the shift happen? Because, even if you take
Yeah.
plastic and pollution, the generation before us bought everything that was like in plastic. There was a
Yeah.
time when they sold the best of their wooden and brass
And
to
got
buy
plastic.
plastic. Yes, they were like,
Yeah.
wow, plastic. Because
Plastic, you can watch it.
I know, because there was a time in our history when brass and copper was not in fashion. And so silver coated, that is ever silver coated, They
Yeah.
coated the brass and the copper, and today everyone is trying to scrape the brass and the copper back
So
into
that you
what it
can get the
was.
actual thing out.
Yeah, because it's, but
Mhm.
that is how human nature has been. Where do you
Yeah.
think the shift happened? Where do you think the generation of today started thinking, okay, listen, we are creating a bigger mess in the environment? Actually, it's not only here, across the world. I feel the youth
Yeah.
has is trying to actually damage control.
Yeah. I think yesterday I was at this gathering, a socially distant gathering. I was actually at a protest, but um, and one of the pastors there spoke about how his generation needs to step back and allow our generation to lead and not tell our generation how to lead. I think the shift really came from this idea that we were opened up to information from a very
Mm.
young age to consume our own information and to go beyond consuming information to creating content.
Yes,
Whether
yes.
it was social media, newspapers, taking photographs, social media, whatever. So we went beyond consumers of information to creators of information. And inherently, we were trained to think critically and to be problem solvers. And I think, I don't know exactly what happened, but I feel like our generation from the beginning, we wanted to sort of not reform the system, but we wanted to reimagine the system.
Mm.
Came and said, this is broken. We can't reform this. It's beyond reform, whether it's environmental issues, whether it's a political system, whether it's education system. And we said, we're going to rethink how things are done
Mm.
because our systems were made by, I mean, in the US by rich white men, in Sri Lanka by Sinhala Buddhist men who were raised and educated in Britain.
Of course.
And what we said was, we're going to redesign this entire thing.
Mm.
And I think there's always a generational gap that's happening because we need to take the knowledge and take our sort of ancestors and leaders with us. But also, I think they need to
Filter.
be aware
Yeah.
of exactly opening up the space for us.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, you have created so much of an impact to the youth. Like, I have always quoted you in many things I've done. As someone, I'm so proud to know that, I'm not saying it in a way like, oh, because you're a girl, but in a world where we say, women need to fight for their rights, I always feel that women with the right mindset have shown that every woman can stand equal to every man out there. And I think that's the most important thing. I am someone who was brought up by my mom and by my sister. I've never had a male figure in my life, and I'm so happy with what the outcome. I'm sure they must be happy as well with what the outcome is.
Of
But
course, then.
but I'm just saying, because I feel that in this world, I think women have, I think, all the power and more in creating such a great impact. Because I think women teach you empathy and not only sympathy. They teach you how to understand a person's situation. In this so-called man-driven world, what are the first type of issues you have felt? Have you faced any issues?
I mean, every day. I think God, from like issues going in the bus, walking on the road, to being said things like, I don't know, like, oh, like I would love to like rape you, to social media, to then coming into academia, the political landscape, all of that, and seeing how women are never considered as experts. Women are never considered as a voice of authority. And the number of manners that have been happening here in Sri Lanka, the number of places, organizers that think it's completely fine to put like 10 men on a panel and say experts in X, Y, and Z. And there are so many women who've done incredible work in these spaces who always get devalued. They're either the moderator, sometimes they're the organizer, but they're never given the platform to say, you're an expert in this. We're not bringing you here to bring the female perspective or the gender perspective. We're bringing you here because you're an expert in this space. And I think that's sort of like how the spectrum goes from being said, oh, I want to rape you on the middle of the road, to being said, oh, do you want to come on this panel as a moderator? And I'm like, no, this panel is about education, and I am an expert in education, and I'm going to speak
And you to
on the
be
panel.
you have to be speaking
Yeah,
as a panelist and not as someone who's curating only the questions.
yeah. And if I was a good curator, then I would love to moderate, but I'm not. So I think we really need to shift our mindset. I mean, these are the companies that have been organizing these manuals are like big corporates and talented, educated, like good men. And I'm like, do you not see this? And it's that they don't. It's not that they're going to be like, oh, today I'm going to be sexist and I'm going to put this panel of 10 men. No, they just
It's just
don't
that
see.
it doesn't cross their mind. They don't see it as a problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't. Because
And
that's normal.
yeah, and also the fact that what you said is very, very true. Like when you bring in a woman onto a panel or to a forum, they always say, "Oh, to get a woman's point of view
Female
or a
person. Yeah.
female's point of view, we have got in this one person." It's like when we have when we just want to save face and we have one Sinhala, one Buddhist, one Catholic, one Muslim, like in one poster, just because we want to be like, okay, we have represented Sri Lanka. That is not Sri Lanka. Sri
Tick,
Lanka
tick,
is
tick.
represented
Yeah.
by one person. Any person has to represent Sri Lanka.
Sri
That's what,
Lanka.
yeah, that's what I feel. I've never said just because somebody has like Tirunur on your face or their face is covered, that's what defines them as a Sri Lankan Muslim. Anyone
Yeah.
can be any religion. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's
Now,
exactly what happens.
you have been very open about politics. You've been quite, well, what can I say, controversial and also very vocal about these.
Vocal.
Would you enter politics? Is that your plan? Or would you
No,
or would you like to be in the advice?
maybe.
Would you like to be in the advisory? Or would you
I
like to
think
actually run in
I
politics?
think I've always thought about this because now since I'm sort of entering my 25, I've been trying
Yeah.
to think about this question of where can I make the most impact?
True.
Where could I possibly make the most impact? And having worked with the government sector, I think one of the places where we don't see that there's power is people who are working in the public administration, people who are secretaries, people who are additional secretaries, people who
course.
are working in divisional secretariats, who have so much power to run the show.
And to
We
make
don't
that
have
call, which is right.
exactly to make sure the last mile works. Because a lot of our policy making, it doesn't look good on paper either, but the last mile fails. So the implementation and the intervention fails. So I think that's a space I've been looking at. I don't know if I can if somebody just gives me a call and is like, oh, do you want to be education minister for like 2 years? That would be my ideal dream.
Yeah.
But that's not how the world works.
Yeah, that's definitely not.
I don't think that's how the world works.
They always say politics is an ugly, dirty game. Do you have faith in Sri Lankan politics?
Since I've recently looking at young people who are coming out, absolutely yes. 100%.
But
I
with
don't
the
believe in how.
with
No.
the current,
Oh, absolutely not.
okay.
What I feel is that the Sri Lankan political system has so much potential to change. We have such talented individuals in all. If you take the ministries in Sri Lanka, we can find at least 5 extremely well-educated people who have good grassroots knowledge, who have good policy making skills, and a good idea of how the bureaucracy works to fill in those ministerial positions. But the gap is that we have such a bankrupt electoral process. We need at least, I don't know, at least like 5 million to run a campaign.
But
And then
we
you
also
see
need a sense of education to the
voters.
because I'm not saying it as a way of as something that will offend anyone, but just
No.
because you have portrayed a character on screen, it is not the character that you are voting for. You're voting for a person who has his or her own mindset. Whereas, when does that change? Because we have had people getting into holding a seat in the parliament, a place where you can actually change the constitution of this country, given to people who have portrayed a character on screen. And we have always been a country like that. We have transformed personalities into leaders.
Yeah. No, I think what you said about personalities into leaders is exactly what we've been doing. If you look at our political landscape, it's either somebody whose father was in politics or mother was in politics, and rarely
Business
mother.
continues, yeah.
Business continues, or you're like a business tycoon who has the money to fund a campaign.
Yeah, true.
You rarely have people who are passionate about the cause. You rarely have ministers who have subject area expertise. So they spend I appreciate the fact that they take like a couple of months to learn, but nobody even does that. One minister might be like, oh, I took 2 months to like actually learn what education is, but nobody really does that. I think with the voter base, democracy only works when we have an educated, aware voter base who's ready to question authority.
True.
Else it becomes a dictatorship automatically.
Yeah, because we have allowed that dictatorship to happen.
Yeah. And obviously we have like terrible people who come into politics with the idea of setting up dictatorships. So you have that as well. But I think my one simple solution is that with our borders, we've been doing this thing called the Civic Series, where we've been creating a civic curriculum for young people.
Right.
So educating them on everything from how the divisional secretariat level to the Grama Sevaka level, right to the parliament of how things work.
Yeah.
Even for me, like before the coup happened, I didn't know who was representing me at the provincial council.
True.
I didn't know.
That's not good because
that is so bad.
Yeah, true.
And I mean, I'm not blaming anyone because I was in the same shoes.
Yeah.
I didn't know who was representing me in the provincial council.
Because there's always a statement. Yeah, but there's always a statement, anyone who has a good heart can join politics, but politics will corrupt you. What is your take on this statement? Because I want to know, as someone who will one day govern at least one part of this country, a little corner. I'm okay even if that little corner will be the corner of change. So I'm willing to ask you this question. Do you think politics can corrupt anyone who goes in, even with the right mindset?
I don't think so. I understand that the Sri Lanka's party system is very broken. It's so archaic. It's like an old boys club. It's like they like sit around a table and drink tea kind of thing. It's so broken. And I understand when people go into politics, you need to please your party. So you need to do your party politics part. And then you have to appeal to your voter base. So you're stuck between like these two systems.
And do you feel 5 years is good enough? By the time they settle one side and start the other side, their time in the parliament is done? Or
it's done. Yeah. And the other thing is we don't have a policy focused, when one government comes, they have one set of policies and the policy doesn't continue.
And do you feel that, women being represented in parliament in Sri Lanka has been a battle that has been spoken for years and years and years? As a girl who is actually looking at a future in this, what would you say is the ideal balance in the parliament? Considering the fact that not many women come forward to enter politics as well. So considering the amount of interest that is there, tell me, what would you say is the ideal amount?
I think in terms of percentages, obviously I was such a proponent of sort of the 50-50 or 60-40 level. If you look at provincial council level, there are so many women coming forward, Danu, and we don't even realize that. Because what happens is when they come forward and ask for nominations, they get cut off at a party level. And this is something that a lot of current female parliament, and one of the things I've seen is there's a lot of solidarity, at least among the few female parliamentarians that are currently having seats. I guess not all of them, at least a few of them, talking about issues that affect them irrespective of which party they're in, which is really encouraging to see them sitting in one platform together. I think the ideal, obviously, at the moment, you need a quota system because we're at a really bad place. But I think look at Rwanda, look at Finland, look at Iceland, and not even Scandinavian countries. Like look at Rwanda. When you create spaces, when you open up this and fix the party politics of it, women come forward, women run, and women win, and they do a damn good job. But I think we've been putting women on the ballot simply because they're popular, and then you set them up for failure, and then you're like, look, what a terrible job have they done? So you can't set people up for failure and then be like, what have you done now?
Exactly.
So,
It's not about securing a place in the parliament seat for your party.
no,
It's about
it's
securing the
not.
right person there so that your party can shine throughout. Um, one more question. This is something that people have actually sent me to ask you. We have a lot of influencers and keyboard warriors, and
Oh no.
we always speak about it because I'm someone of example. Let's say I always say, just because I have a sense of followers for what I do, and I am so grateful because that's
Of
the
course.
validation for my job, because
Yeah.
that is
In
what
the
my job is
industry you're
about.
in.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't give me the right to influence their mind in a particular way and also
Yeah.
fight for everything. Fight for cutting the tree, fight for abusing a dog, fight for women's rights, fight for children's rights, fight for education. So this has
Yeah.
become like, now it has become like a joke. Oh, these people are just jabbering now. There are those keyboard warriors have become highlighted today. As
Yeah.
someone who is actually working, leaving the keyboard aside, someone who had to actually reinstall her Instagram to even do this live.
I only did it for you.
Yes. Tell me,
Yeah.
what do you think they should keep in mind?
Yeah.
Can someone be upset about everything in this world and rant on Facebook and Instagram and then move on and just live a normal life?
I think obviously now, since the past 2 weeks, that has sort of really come out and people have been talking about it. I think one of the things I think is like, with great power comes even greater responsibility. And that's something we don't realize, especially in terms of influencing people or whatever that might look like. And on the flip side, I get accused of things like, why didn't you talk about that dog who was killed like 3 weeks ago?
Mm,
And I'm like, shit, I didn't know. And also, that's not something I have expertise in to talk about. I don't have the connections to
exactly.
do anything about it. So I
Exactly.
think for
Because Sri
me,
Lanka is currently going through Black Lives Matter problem as well.
yeah,
I'm all for the fact that, people don't need to define themselves in beautiful saying, you're fair. But of course, we
yeah,
do have some people who think, "Sudunu tamai lassana." We have that mindset still, but that is another story. But because people have written to me saying, "Oh, fight against that, fight against this." Sometimes I always wonder, like, where does this, when do we find the solution for all these arguments
yeah,
online?
yeah. I think one of the things I strongly believe in is unlearning and educating yourself. I've made mistakes online. I made like many mistakes online of things I didn't know about, things I wasn't ignorant about, things I was ignorant about by choice sometimes. And I think the right step to take is to say, wow, I have a lot to learn here. I'm going to take a week or so to read, to talk to people, to educate myself. I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, I'm sorry this happened. I am now a better person because of the mistake I made. This is my learning. And this is how I would go into the future with this learning that you have pointed out that I was lacking. And I think that takes a lot of courage. That's hard. But I think given this time, this very sort of very different and special and painful time, I think that's the right way to do. Because at the end of the day, as I said, with power comes so much responsibility.
Responsibility. Because if you
Yeah.
have a follower list and if you have a good base who is following you for the love of you or for the work you have done or
Yeah.
for the contribution you have done, it could be on entertainment, it could be on anything. It's your
Whatever.
duty to
Yeah.
promote the right and to
Yeah.
create that balance. Now that you
Exactly.
are in the US, I have to ask you the most obvious question. How are things there?
Um, I think I think we should be surprised if people weren't angry. if things weren't getting violent, that's when we should have been surprised.
Yeah, true.
And also, I think when you're looking at it from afar, because even while I'm here, I'm a Sri Lankan citizen, and I'm also looking at it from an outsider lens. I've been to protest myself, and I think we've realized, our Sri Lankan community has realized this is not only an issue that's affecting the US.
Yeah.
Colorism, racism is everywhere.
Of
Even in
course.
Sri Lanka, Danu, people say, oh, colorism and racism is two different things.
Yeah.
When we look at a person who's darker, who can raise their hands and say that you haven't been like, Ani demala danne kaluine? That is the undertone, but we're not talking about it.
Of course.
We're not talking about it. When we say dark, we automatically match it to a certain race, and then we devalue that race. So, I mean, at least here, it's young people who are coming out, and say this was a system that was created on inequality, by white supremacists, by racial divisions, by considering Black people as slaves, and we need to redo it. We're done with it. We're going to reimagine something that is completely different to what the future generations have done, and you need to give us the space to do it. That's your dog.
Malli. I'm sorry about this.
Does he always bark?
No, he's just gone on his little walk. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it is, of course, although this issue of Black Lives Matter is in the United States, I think the fact that what the world has learned from it is that lives matter. And any life that is taken for granted is a problem. And we come from a country like that. We have fought against each other for how many years, and if we are done fighting against each other, we find another reason to fight against someone. I think is a way for us to learn that it's just enough. Like as somebody who represents the Tamil community, like I have been checked differently for the only reason I'm Tamil, or for
because
the fact
you have such a surname.
And I still remember one in makeup going for a shoot, and it was pouring cats and dogs, and the police said, you have to get out. And I said, no, I'm not getting down from this vehicle. You can see my ID. They said, no, you have to give your pass, or like the police report, to stay here. I said, I've been living in Colombo since I was 7 years old. And I said, I cannot get on because I'm on my way for a shoot. But this happened not so long ago. I'm still walking and talking. But this is what you call, this is, of course, the last thing I want is to bomb any place up in my life. We are just easygoing people who want to live a united life. So we need to incorporate it. What we can learn from the world is the fact that any the world that's believing in diversity, that's believing in breaking the community in any form, either it could be for color, race, or for gender, or for anything. I think this is a lot for us to realize, man, we better learn from this.
I know. I think it's a learning moment for everyone everywhere. And that the sign I was carrying for the past 3 days said, your silence is not going to protect you. Whether you're in Sri Lanka, I'm the majority. I'm a Sinhala Buddhist. I come with so much freaking privilege. And my silence is not going to protect me. It's not going to protect you. And I think it's for us to acknowledge our privilege and come up and speak and act. So,
Well, it has been absolutely amazing talking to you.
So great talking to you, Danu.
For those who are wondering who she is a remarkable young leader of our country who is proving us every single day that if you put your mind to it, your difficulties of the past, your challenges that is given to you is only an opportunity for you to seize. Losing your dad at the age of 2, to find the inspiration, and your mum, what a phenomenal lady she is. I think a single mum is a warrior of her own. They can
100%.
Like, I'm telling you, as somebody who was brought up by one as well.
Yeah.
The things they do for you, the things that they feel that they can't do and that they end up doing. Even they feel surprised. They're like, whoa, how did I do that?
Sometimes I was like, how did I raise you alone?
and also in terms of paying a house bill, paying a rent,
Paying rent?
yeah, like making sure that we are fed and we are nourished to live the next day. So it's phenomenal, Kavindya. I think your honesty, the fact that you're open, and the fact that you're willing to serve this country proves to those that you always want to come back here, and that is
Yeah,
amazing. And
thank you.
you are a true inspiration, and I wish you nothing but the best. Strong
Thank you,
leaders like
Danu.
you are the stepping stone to the future of our country.
Thank you, Danu. I really appreciate it. It was so lovely catching up.
Oh, it's wonderful. Stay blessed and continue doing what you're doing. I can't wait to see you here with your big qualifications, and I'm going to just wait.
Oh, thanks, Danu. And I'll hopefully see you in person soon.
Yes, for sure. Well, thank you so
Yes.
very much. Wonderful day,
Yeah.
and yeah, lots of love.
Awesome. Take care. Bye.
Bye. You can read all about Kavindya, of course, even a high magazine cover girl. So happy to have such young leaders representing our country on a global platform as well. Speaking about women in parliament, speaking about equal education, speaking about recreating an education system that's going to benefit not only today, but the future of our country, and to create the platform that it needs. So keeping all of this in mind, thank you so very much for joining me today on our very special edition to Date with Danu on Daily Mirror. And sorry about the fact that my dog had to bark at one point. It's been amazing joining you. Till we see you soon. You have yourself a great week ahead. Be safe. Follow the precautions so that you and your loved ones and everyone around you is safe during these hard times. Have yourself a wonderful night. Good night.